So my name is Dr. Stephen Hassan. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I am an author of 4 books, and I am director of the Freedom of Mind Resource Center. I define authoritarian cults in terms of uh, basically controlling people's behavior, their information, their thoughts, and their emotions, what I refer to as my bite model of authoritarian control. And a lot of authoritarian cults um, have leaders that are malignant narcissists, living leaders who want power, money, and sex. And then there are other authoritarian cults that are simply ideological cults. There's not a living leader, but they have a belief system and they're on automatic pilot, so to speak, even though they don't have the charismatic malignant narcissist anymore. It's the opposite for me of what a religious group should be, of any kind, any really religious group, because my faith as a Jew relies on the notion that people are following out of faith and not out of lies and coercion. So the idea of conscience is critical to me, that any truly religious group doesn't subvert someone's uniqueness, their critical abilities, their ability as an adult to decide what they want to read or who they want to talk to, and where people are empowered to choose to believe or choose not to believe and not have fear and phobias and harassment and shunning done on them. Um, but I think a critical notion is, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor, I should say, a critical idea is that it's a dissociative disorder that happens when people are in these authoritarian cults where they're made to be a version of what the leader wants or what the ideology wants versus being true to themselves. This especially is but the critical notion is people need to grow up to individuate in a healthy family, in a healthy society, and be an adult where they are making decisions, where they are regulating their emotional states and having meaningful work and meaningful relationships. And unfortunately, these authoritarian groups want to keep people psychologically like children, dependent, obedient, threatened, by punishment if they don't obey completely, versus this healthy, mature psychology. And when I talk about authoritarian cults, it's important that you understand, your listeners understand that I'm not just talking about religious groups. I'm talking about political entities, even countries that run like dictatorships are political cults, authoritarian cults. Could be a multi-level marketing group or commercial trafficking is a bite model cult. It could be a large group awareness training. It could be an unethical therapist or psychological control. Social psychology teaches something called the fundamental attribution error, which is a bias, an unconscious bias that all people have when trying to understand other people's behaviors. And we have this bias to overestimate personal variables or dispositional variables and underestimate social contextual variables. In other words, why did Stephen get in the Moonies? Oh, he was weak, he was stupid, he wasn't educated, he didn't know religion, whatever, versus Steve was lied to, he was in a vulnerable moment because his girlfriend dumped him. These women did one of the classic cult recruitment scenarios, which Steve learned to do when he was recruiting for the Moonies too, I might add. So this notion, we have to, step back and recognize the human condition, and we are pretty predictable if you understand the rules of social psychology. So if you frame something as a scarcity, it makes it more attractive to people. If someone is handsome or a woman is beautiful and they're put up front to be a recruiter, they're going to be more successful than somebody who is not deemed by the cultural norm to be attractive. There are these universals that everyone needs to understand. But the most important first thing that I want all your listeners to understand is that we're human beings, so we are completely vulnerable to information and people in our environment and what we're putting into our brains, and we are hardwired to follow trusted authority figures. We're hardwired to conform to the people we identify with. And it's only the what's called the heroic resistors who say no. I'm not going to press the shock thing because the guy's screaming in pain saying his heart bothers him, even though the authority figure with the coat on is saying you have no choice, you must do it. There's people who say, you know what, no, I'm not going to do it. If you want to electrocute someone, you press the button. Don't get me involved. In fact, I want to go in and check on the guy and see if he's alive and call 911 if he's not, right? But we need to understand these methods and techniques, and that's part of why I've written 4 books, including Combating Cult Mind Control, which came out in 1988 and has helped hundreds of thousands of people just by reading it to go, wait a minute, this applies to my experience. Um, there are certain principles that don't work and certain principles that are very effective. And what doesn't work is trying to yell at the person or talk down to the person or persuade them with facts and attack the group directly. That makes people feel persecuted, misunderstood, and they get deeper into the mindset versus asking a respectful question and being patient and waiting for an answer and following up with another question and using other groups like Chinese communist brainwashing programs, which is what helped to deprogram me from the Moonies, or traffickers or pimps, and explaining the bite model in terms of that. Then people have a frame. Oh yeah, traffickers are bad. They lie. They use the behavior, information, thought, and emotion. Once they have that frame of brainwashing exists, then you can ask them questions how their group is different. Are they encouraged to talk to former members and critics? Oh, they're not. That's interesting. How do you feel about that? Aren't you an intelligent adult? Shouldn't you be able to decide whether or not what they have to say has validity or not? So just that kind of warm, friendly, curious, like help me step into your shoes kind of approach is what's most effective.